You're sitting in the dark. No roof over your head, no walls around you, just open sky and the sound of fire eating wood. It's somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago. The sun went down hours ago, and with it went every source of light except the flames in front of you. Beyond that circle of orange and gold, the world is completely, absolutely black. Your tribe is here. Maybe 15 people, maybe 30. You've been together all day, tracking, carrying, arguing without real words, reading each other's faces the way you read the ground for animal prints. You're exhausted. Your feet hurt. Something tried to kill you this afternoon, and it almost worked. And then someone does something strange. It's not a word. There are barely words yet, not the way we use them. It's not a warning call, not the sound you make when something is wrong. It's not laughter exactly, though it's close to that. It comes from somewhere in the chest, rises through the throat, and spills out into the dark. A sound that goes up, then down, then up again. Shaped, intentional, repeated. And every single person around that fire stops what they're doing. We don't know this person's name. We never will. There is no grave, no carving, no fossil that captures the moment. The first song in human history dissolved into the night air somewhere in Africa, or maybe Asia, or maybe both places at once, in moments we will never be able to pinpoint, by people we will never be able to identify. That's just the truth of it. But here's what makes this one of the most fascinating rabbit holes in all of human science. We know it happened. We know it happened before language as we understand it. We know it happened before any musical instrument ever found. And we know that whatever that first sound was, that first deliberate, melodic, emotionally loaded human vocalization, it spread. It stuck. It became the most universal thing our species has ever done. Every culture on Earth sings. Not most, every single one. No exceptions have ever been found. Not one isolated tribe, not one documented group of human beings across all of recorded history and anthropology that did not have music. That's not a coincidence. That's not a quirk. That is a signal about something fundamental in what we are. So who was the first human to ever sing? And what on earth were they trying to say? Here's the obvious answer. And it's wrong. The obvious answer is that singing evolved from birds. We heard them, we copied them, we turned it into something cultural over time. Clean, logical, the kind of explanation that sounds right at a dinner party. Except birds and humans developed vocal learning completely independently through different neurological pathways in different brain regions with different biological machinery. The similarity is convergent evolution, not imitation. We didn't learn from them. We arrived at something similar from an entirely different direction. Okay, new obvious answer. Singing evolved from speech. Humans developed language, and music was just language getting creative. Decoration on top of the foundation. Except the timeline doesn't support this either. The neurological evidence increasingly points in the opposite direction. Singing may actually be older than language. Not younger, not parallel. Older. Charles Darwin noticed this first, which is either impressive or embarrassing depending on how you look at it, because he wrote about it in 1871, and we're still debating it. Darwin proposed that before humans had language, our ancestors communicated through something he described as musical, a system of emotional vocalizations that carried meaning through tone, melody, and rhythm rather than through words. He called it a musical proto-language. He thought singing, or something like it, came first. The cognitive archaeologist Stephen Mithen took this further and built an entire theory around it. He called the prehistoric communication system Hmmmmm, which stands for holistic, manipulative, multimodal, musical, and mimetic. The idea is that early humans communicated in whole emotional packages, sounds that weren't words but carried complex meaning through melody and body movement together. Language as we know it, discrete words with discrete meanings, came later as an evolution of that system, not the other way around. This is a genuinely radical idea because it flips everything we assumed about the relationship between music and speech. We always treated music as the luxury, the add-on, the thing humans invented after we got the important cognitive stuff sorted out. But what if music is the foundation? What if the first thing the human voice did with intention wasn't name an object or issue a command, but express something it had no other way of expressing? What if language evolved from song, and not the other way around? That reframes the question entirely, because then the first human to ever sing wasn't doing something artistic or recreational. They were doing something that would eventually become talking. They were inventing the raw material that would one day become every word ever spoken in every language on Earth. And they had absolutely no idea. Here's where it stops being theory and starts being measurable. Put a newborn infant in a room. Don't say a word, just hum. What happens? The baby turns toward you. The baby's heart rate changes. The baby's body relaxes or alerts depending on whether the melody goes up or down, whether the rhythm is steady or broken. Not because anyone taught the baby to respond that way, because the response is already built in, already wired, already running before the child has learned a single thing about the world. Researchers have tested this across cultures, across languages, across wildly different musical traditions. Infants respond to melodic contour universally. A rising phrase signals something different than a falling one to every baby on the planet, regardless of what country they were born in or what language surrounds them. This is not learned behavior. This is factory settings. This is the human nervous system arriving pre-configured for something that looks a lot like music. And then there's the mother-infant vocalization data, which is one of the most quietly stunning bodies of research in all of cognitive science. In every documented human culture, without exception, mothers use a specific modified vocal style with infants. Higher pitch, slower tempo, exaggerated melodic contour. What we casually call baby talk is actually something much more precise. It is universal musical communication, and infants are measurably better at processing it than normal speech. They track it better, they respond to it longer, their brains light up differently. Before a child understands a single word, it understands melody. Before language, music. Every time, across the entire species. But here is where it gets almost uncomfortably interesting. Singing doesn't just communicate between individuals, it synchronizes them physically. When a group of people sing together, their heart rates converge. This has been measured in choirs, in religious congregations, in groups of strangers who had never met before the experiment started. The cardiovascular systems of separate human beings begin operating in coordination. Breathing aligns. Neural oscillations synchronize across different skulls. This is not metaphor. This is not poetic language about unity and togetherness. This is a documented, reproducible, physiological phenomenon. Singing together literally makes separate bodies function more like one organism. Think about what that means for a small group of humans in the dark, surrounded by things that wanted to eat them, dependent on total coordination for survival. Singing wasn't a luxury. It wasn't entertainment. It was a biological tool for turning a collection of frightened individuals into something that moved and responded and held together like a single unit. The first singer wasn't performing. They were solving a problem that language alone could not solve. Let's talk about what we can actually touch. In 2008, archaeologists working in the Swabian Jura region of southwestern Germany pulled something out of the ground that stopped everyone cold. A flute. Carved from the hollow wing bone of a griffin vulture, split lengthwise, hollowed out, fitted with 5 finger holes placed with unmistakable precision. It was found in Hohlefels cave, alongside some of the oldest figurative art ever discovered. It dates to approximately 43,000 years ago. This is not a rough attempt. This is not someone accidentally making noise with a bone. The spacing of the holes is deliberate. The instrument was designed to produce specific pitches. Whoever made this had a concept of melody already fully formed in their head before they started carving. which means the musical tradition that produced this object was already old when this particular flute was made. You don't start with sophistication. Sophistication is where you arrive after a very long time of practice. But here's the thing that most people miss when they talk about prehistoric music. The flute is not the beginning. The flute is already deep into the story. The human voice predates every instrument by an unknowable margin. You don't need tools to sing. You don't need materials. You don't need to learn a craft. You just need a larynx and something to feel. And our ancestors had both for hundreds of thousands of years before anyone put finger holes in a bone. So if the instruments are 43,000 years old, the singing is older, much older. The question is just how much. Then there's the cave evidence, which is the part that genuinely unsettles people when they hear it for the first time. Researchers studying the famous painted caves of France and Spain noticed something that had been overlooked for decades. The paintings are not randomly distributed across cave walls. They cluster in specific locations, and those locations have something in common. They are the spots with the most dramatic acoustic resonance, the places where sound bounces back in ways that feel almost supernatural, where a single voice suddenly fills an entire underground chamber and returns to you transformed. Someone 40,000 years ago walked deep into a cave in total darkness, carrying fire, and specifically chose the loudest room to leave their mark. They weren't just painting, they were performing. The art and the music were the same ritual, and someone had to sing first before anyone picked up the paint. You already know the answer. You've always known it. Think about the last time you were alone in a car on a long drive and a song came on that you hadn't heard in years. What did you do? You didn't decide to sing. You didn't weigh the options and conclude that singing was the appropriate response. It just happened. The melody came up through you before you were even aware it was coming. Your body did it without asking your permission first. Or the shower. Or the kitchen at 7 in the morning when nobody is watching and something sounds good in your head and suddenly it's coming out of your mouth and you don't even know why. You're not performing. You're not practicing. You're just a human being doing the thing that human beings do when something inside needs to get out. And words aren't quite enough to carry it. That is not a modern behavior. That is not something the internet gave you or pop culture installed in you. That impulse, that specific feeling of something rising in the chest that wants to become sound, is as old as our species, possibly older. It was there before the cave paintings, it was there before the bone flute, it was there before anyone had words for what it was or why it happened. Here's what the science says about why it feels so good. Singing releases endorphins. It releases oxytocin, the same bonding hormone released by physical touch and eye contact. It suppresses cortisol, the primary stress hormone. It activates the vagus nerve in ways that shift the entire nervous system toward calm. When you sing, even alone, even badly, even half-remembered lyrics in a car on a Tuesday, your body responds as if something important and good is happening. Because something important and good is happening. Because that's exactly what it was built for. The first human to ever sing didn't know any of this. They didn't have a theory of neurochemistry, or an understanding of social bonding, or a concept of music as a category of human experience. They had a fire in front of them, and darkness all around, and people they needed to stay connected to, and something moving inside their chest that had no other way out. So they opened their mouth, and something came out that wasn't a word, and the people around the fire felt it land somewhere deep and true. 40,000 years later, 50,000, 100,000, you still do exactly the same thing. Different fire, same human, same sound trying to get out. That thread has never once been broken.